Good morning, fathers of daughters. This is F from B. Martin. I am 58 years of age, and I am a girl dad. I welcome you from the beautiful state of Colorado. It is Sunday, September the 10th. Fathers, I hope you had a good week with your children, with your daughters, with your sons, and I hope that you had a good weekend yourselves, fathers. We're here in another live stream, fathers. And what I would like to discuss today is I would like to discuss and talk about what the research says regarding fathers and their children, sons and daughters. Okay? You know, fathers, there's a lot of great research out there that's available to us and that can help us. And one of the things that I'm going to do is make sure that I provide ample research, ample studies, and of daughters and fathers, with their children. So whether it's boys or little girls, right? Research. How valuable is research, fathers? Well, research is necessary. And the reason that research is necessary is because what research is going to do for us is it's going to allow us to be able to fact check and be able to help us more than just an opinion. You know, fathers, because the world will tell us a lot of different things about what fathers are supposed to be doing or not be doing. So if you don't have proper research and available research in front of you, a lot of times you're not going to be able to make an informed decision or a good decision for your children. Research is necessary because what it does is it gives us something other than an opinion. There's a lot of people that are out there, specifically a lot of single people who've never raised children or don't have children of their own. They always have opinions though, right? They've never raised children, don't have their own children, but they always have an opinion about parents. They always have an opinion about what parents should be doing. They always have an opinion about how parents should be raising their children. But like I said, there's a lot of single people out there that don't have their own children, but they do have a lot of opinions, okay? So research is important, fathers. And in the description, I have research, and what I'm going to be reading off today is also in the description for research and understudies, all right? So fathers, always make sure, don't take my word for it, but always make sure you do your own research, right? Because without you doing your own research, anybody on YouTube can create a YouTube channel and say whatever the hell they want to say, and they think it's fact, right? So it's important for us as girl dads, as fathers of daughters, right? To always research and to always be on the front end of research, because research is going to save our butts a lot of times. It's going to answer a lot of our questions, right? It's going to inform us to things that we did not know, what we should know, what we need to know when it comes to the rearing and fathering of our children. Now, don't just rely on research. As a father, you have to rely on your own instinct, because fathers, trust me, we have our own solutions, right? We know how to get in there and raise our children. We know how to be good dads and fathers. But the research is only going to back our decision making a lot of times and just help us deal with what we're going to be dealing with our children. So I want to begin with some statistics when it comes to fathers and why it's necessary for fathers to be in their children's lives. Okay? 83% of youth suicides are from fatherless homes. 83% of suicides in the United States of America come from fatherless homes. That's huge, right? So what that research is telling us is that if a child is suicidal, 83% of them come from fatherless homes. So it's critical that fathers are in the homes with their children. It's critical that fathers are not only in the home, but part of the decision-making process when it comes to their kids. 90% of all homeless and runaway children are from fatherless homes. Think about that. Think about that. 90% of homeless and runaway kids. Now, I'm a former state of Colorado juvenile probation officer. I worked in the criminal justice system for 20 years. And let me tell you, that 90%, that's on point. Because I can promise you, the little girls that I was supervising in the criminal justice system that were on probation, 90 to 95% of them were runaways. Crazy. But those are the facts. 85% of all children who have behavioral disorders are from fatherless homes. Once again, the presence of a father. It's necessary. Mothers cannot do it by themselves. It's not fair to them to put that burden on them by themselves, right? But we live in a world today that will have you believing fathers aren't necessary. That's a lie. And it just isn't true. So fathers, we have to make sure we are a part and participating in our children's lives on a daily basis. 80% of rapists with anger problems come from fatherless homes. Think about that. So when you're talking about state and federal prisons of adult men, violent men that have committed crimes against women, 80% of them come from fatherless homes. And there's a reason for that, right? Little boys that aren't raised by their fathers have multiple issues, have to deal with a lot of other things. I can speak for myself. I was raised by a single mother by default. My father was murdered when I was 2 years of age by the grace of God. I had good men in my life. I had mentors in my life. I had my cousins, my first cousins. I had my brothers, my older brothers. I'm the youngest child of 5. I have 2 older brothers and 2 older sisters, right? So being the baby of the family, I had my own issues. I had to deal with a lot of different things. Not having a father, I can vividly tell you, I was never an angry child, but I understood a lot of children that didn't have fathers, why they were angry. I understood why they got into the things they got into, because a lot of them, they didn't have that guidance of a father. And yes, mothers are critical. And with that being said, fathers are necessary as well. 71% of high school dropouts come from fatherless homes. Think about that statistic. 71% of high school dropouts. Now, I also had a career in the educational system. I worked in K-12 education for 10 years, okay? I'm a former dean of students. I'm a former teacher. So I got to deal with children on a daily basis that had behavioral problems and other issues. And I can tell you, a lot of kids that struggle, that were disciplinary problems, most of them was because their fathers were not in the home. Most of them were because their fathers were not a part of their rearing. Most of them were raised by single mothers. Those are the facts. When I think about when I was a dean of students in K-12 education, both middle school and high school, I was a dean of students. And I think about just a lot of the students that I worked with on a daily basis that just had anger issues and had discipline issues. A lot of these kids, they didn't have their fathers. They were angry for many reasons. And they projected their anger on other children for many reasons. I can tell you my experience in K-12 education on the front end, because I worked on the back end in the criminal justice system as a state juvenile probation officer. It was night and day. And working with kids on the front end in education it was better for me because I prevented a lot of kids and was able to work with a lot of families to make sure that their children did not end up on the back end of the criminal justice system. But I have firsthand knowledge and firsthand experience of working directly with the middle school children and high school kids that didn't have fathers in their lives and got to saw the effects of fatherlessness and their fathers not being part of the decision-making process. Mothers can't do it by themselves. You know, I understand all marriages are not going to work out. So if marriages don't work out, fathers, it is your responsibility to be a part of and stay in your child's life because mothers cannot do it by themselves. It's just not fair to them. Let's take a look at some additional statistics. Fatherless children are twice as likely to drop out of high school. Facts. Children with involved fathers are 40% less likely to repeat a grade in school. I can attest to that. All the kids that I worked with that had fathers and a mother in their life, they typically had better grades in school. Their well-being was good. They just typically didn't have as many issues, and they typically had better guidance because they came from a two-parent household. That's not to say that single parents can't do it. I'm not saying that. But when you have a mother and you have a father that comes from a two-parent household, it looks a lot different than it does from a single-parent household. So don't get it twisted on what I'm saying, okay? I said what I said. Children with involved fathers are 70% less likely to drop out of high school. Those are facts. A lot of students I worked with in high school that graduated high school, the majority of them came from two-parent households. The majority of them. Yes, you're going to have your success stories of children that come from single-parent households. But the majority do come from two-parent households. Children with involved fathers are more likely to get A's in school. Once again, facts. Fathers bring a different level of security, advocacy, and sense of urgency in their children's lives than their mothers do. Right? I know, being the father of 4 adult daughters, when my little girls were little, I had to encourage them. K through 5 and 6 through 8, I was on my daughters, right? I provided a framework for them because I worked in the criminal justice system and I also worked in K-12 education. So I had case studies in front of me on what not to do with my own baby girls, right? I got firsthand knowledge, people, working in the criminal justice system and K-12 education on what I needed to do to be successful with my daughters. I implemented it and it worked, okay? So I'm talking from a place of not only raising 4 adult daughters, but from a place of experience and knowledge. And I love sharing what I know. Not an opinion, but what I know. What I dealt with, what I was faced with. Children with involved fathers are more likely to enjoy school and engage in extracurricular activity. Facts. All of my daughters, I introduced all of my daughters to sports. I introduced my daughters to the other side of what it looks like to not just go to school, but to be involved in extracurricular activity. I was very involved with my daughters' extracurricular activities. I took my daughters to and from their extracurricular activities. I participated in their extracurricular activities. Fathers were so important when it comes to our daughters' extracurricular activities, because most little girls, if you introduce them to something, they're going to want to do it. All of my daughters, whether it was competitive cheer, boxing, martial arts, whatever they got involved with, extracurricular activity wise, I made sure I was at the forefront, and I made sure that my daughters knew that their father had their back. So it's all about introducing our daughters, fathers. A lot of times, children don't get introduced to extracurricular activities, and that's fine. Not every child is going to want to play sports. You know, you have children that are artists. You have children that are musically inclined. You have children that you never know what they're going to do. But if you don't introduce them, you're never going to know. So all I'm saying is it's important that we introduce them to the other side, and we let them decide what they want to do, fathers. I want to talk a little bit about the difference that fathers make in their children's lives, the impact that fathers make in their children's lives when it comes to being involved, when it comes to drug and alcohol abuse, okay? When I was a probation officer, I saw a lot of children that used drugs, right? When I was a dean of students, when I was a teacher, a lot of children came from households where their parents were involved in substance abuse, right? And what I can tell you from my experience of being a state juvenile probation officer is these kids were really, really jacked up. I saw a lot of bad stuff in family court and juvenile court because parents that are dealing with addiction and substance abuse issues, their children pay. I can't put it any other way. Their children pay. Their children pay big, right? So the experience that I had as a juvenile probation officer when I had a lot of kids, I had kids. You got to understand, in the state of Colorado, a child could be adjudicated and put on probation at 10 years of age. I had a lot of kids that were doing drugs 10, 11, 12. They were due diagnosis kids, excuse me. They were doing drugs, they were doing alcohol. Dual diagnosis. They were diagnosed, right? Because of their parents. It was sad. And it was just crazy to me. And I just didn't understand. I really did not understand why so many parents, failed their children when it came to drug and alcohol use. It was difficult for me to understand that so many children that I supervised came from parents, alcoholism and drug use. It was painful because these kids, they pay the ultimate price of their parents' decision making. I do understand, and I'm compassionate, and I'm empathetic to parents that use drugs, that abuse drugs. I am compassionate and empathetic, right? But when it comes to kids, I have a different level of empathy. I have a different level of compassion when it comes to kids, because I was working with these kids on a daily basis, and it just broke my heart a lot of times, because a lot of times there just aren't any answers when I was working with them. I couldn't do anything because I wasn't their parent. Kids don't get to pick who their parents are. Kids do not get to pick who their parents are. We're raised with who we're raised with. Those are the families we were born with. You know, it takes an entire village to raise children. You know, it took a village to raise me. But I always think, what happens when children are being raised in the village that isn't healthy? What happens a lot of times to children when their parents aren't healthy? They end up in the criminal justice system. And then bad things happen to these kids. They end up going to group homes. They end up being placed outside the home, separated from their parents, you know, who may be dealing with drug addiction, alcohol addiction, a lot of bad things, right? So I always had a different sense of urgency. There's research from Columbia University. It found that children living in a two-parent household with relationships, with poor relationships with their fathers are 68% more likely to smoke, drink, or use drugs compared to all teens in a two-parent household. So basically, that study is saying, even if you come from a two-parent household, right, kids can have issues with drinking and drugs because they don't have a relationship with their father. Facts. Deep. I can tell you, I can count on one hand the number of kids I supervised on probation, little girls in particular, of their fathers that I met. I can count on one hand how many fathers I met. I was almost a probation officer for 10 years. I can count on one hand how many fathers I met, whether these little girls were coming to me to the first time being placed on probation, whether they were in family court, whether they were in juvenile court. I can tell you on one hand how many fathers I met. And that was just crazy to me. I didn't understand it. You know, that was difficult for me. What ended up happening, me having 4 daughters, is I had a different sense of urgency because I was dealing with this every day. And in my mind, not my daughters, not going to happen. Not my baby girls. The criminal justice system, it's not for them. It's not for my daughters. So I made damn sure, as their father, they were not going to ever end up in the criminal justice system. That is not an option in the Martin household. No. Right? So I saw a lot and I dealt with a lot, and it humbled me. It really, really humbled me. Made me realize how blessed I was. The gift that God gave me of my children, of my daughters. I've always had a sense of urgency when it came to them. This is the last statistic I'm going to read. 75% of all adolescent children, patients in chemical abuse centers, come from fatherless homes. Once again, as a state juvenile probation officer, 90% of the baby girls that I supervised, of the little girls that I supervised, they used drugs. They used alcohol. I want this to register with you fathers. 10, 11, and 12-year-old baby daughters, sons, using drugs, using alcohol, running away from home, raising themselves. Think about that. It can happen to anyone. It can happen in any family, and it does. So, fathers, what we have to continue to do is we have to, 1, be the greatest advocate for our children that we can be. 2, be available and consistent for our children. 3, be open to the idea that if we are not a part of our children's lives, they will fail. Point blank, period. Mothers can't do it by themselves, fathers. Okay? They cannot. And they should not. Because that's not fair to the mothers. A lot of fathers that I've come across in my lifetime, They blame the mothers for a lot of different things. They blame the mothers a lot of times when the kids turn out bad, particularly if they have not been a part of the rearing process, have not been a part of their children's lives. I've always found that interesting. Why do men do that? Because it's easy to do, right? A lot of men will take the praise for their children when they're doing good, but will not take accountability when their children are struggling. And that has to change because that isn't fair. So fathers, I want to continue to encourage you to be the best fathers that you can be of your children, of our daughters, because we have a lot on our plate and we got a lot to handle. But we have solutions, fathers, right? Consistency is going to get us there. It's going to keep us there. Advocacy. All of our children need our best advocacy. They need our best foot forward. They need parents that are consistent. They need a father that is going to be involved in their life, that is going to show them the other side, and that is going to be consistent in their life and not bail on them. That's what our children need, fathers. And when you're a father of a baby girl, we have to take things to a whole different level because protection and safety is real. All right, dads, it's been another live stream. As I continue to build capacity with Girl Dad YouTube channel, I feel good. I feel great about what I'm able to share with fathers, what I'm able to bring, because I have a very unique perspective and a very unique professional background that I bring with Girl Dad YouTube channel. We have the answers, fathers. I'm never going to give up on fathers. I'm not. We have a commonality, and I work with all fathers, regardless of your ethnic group and your culture. That's our commonality. That's our bond. All right, fathers, have a good week. Be blessed. Stay safe. Keep your kids on the forefront, and let's do what we do as dads. Until next week's live stream, I'm out, dads. Peace, much love, and forever blessings. Peace.